back to Open Line. We are talking about the coronavirus tonight with Metro's Task Force Chairman, Dr. Alex Jahangir. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to talk about something that a lot of folks on Facebook are talking about and going back and forth on, and this has happened since the very beginning. Mask versus no mask. There seem to be different studies that say different things. It's all a lot about who you want to believe, but what's your take on wearing a mask?
Well, I think not every side of the story is right, so I'm going to start there. I think if you look at the true science, wearing masks have been shown to help stop the spread. I can quote a couple of studies. One that came out of Berkeley that showed that people who, I think it's 80% of the community wears masks, maybe even less than 87% of the community wears a mask, the transmission of the virus, the infection rates go down by 1/12. So 100 people got infected, 12 would get infected, or whatever, divide that by 12, so 8 would get infected. So what's one thing to talk about studies, but let's look at practice. So have you heard about Japan and how bad coronavirus has hit them? I would say no, right? And the reason is Japan and other countries in East Asia, they haven't shut down, but they're not isolated per se. Especially Japan has a big airport. They didn't shut down, but the reason that a lot of people hypothesize while this has not hit them as bad is those countries in the past have been impacted by
SARS,
swine flu, and SARS, and these other things, and they quickly established a culture of wearing masks, of not shaking hands, of hand hygiene, and so you go on a subway in Japan during flu season, there's a lot of everyone's wearing masks. So it's not been stigmatized. And I think that's, if you want to ask me, one thing that's irritated me is how in this country, I believe we've started to politicize and stigmatize these things. And that's not right. It's just not right. Like, listen, we can argue all day about a lot of different policy things and one side and the other side, and you can leave it to more political people than me to debate that. That's fine. But when it comes to wearing a mask, I mean, wear a mask that has your slogan on it. I don't care. Just wear a mask, because that has been shown to lower infection rates. And so I think we as a culture need to not destigmatize it. And we need to be wearing it more. And again, I think you mentioned it, and I've seen it, and people don't. And, I was actually going to go get a haircut today, true story. And I was walking by, and the guy wasn't wearing a mask, and I didn't go in. And there's a person I've been going to for a long time, and he and I are friends, so I'm sure I'll call him and chat with him about it. But I just won't patronize places that don't do that. I mean, and I think I would encourage others to do that. We have to be in this together. Me saying something is not going to do it, and wearing a mask, I don't think is as big of a burden as many other things that can be put into place.
Let's talk about this pediatric inflammatory syndrome. This sounds pretty scary, and the most that we've been able to say is it's tied to COVID-19, but again, it's something that we don't seem to know a lot about. Tell me more about it.
Well, it is, again, this virus, as we've mentioned, there's a lot of new things that came out about it. And for the most part, this virus has impacted those that are older and those with comorbidities. So that's why a lot of times, while I think a majority of our cases actually are in the 20 to 40-year-old range in Nashville, almost all our deaths are older, and all of our deaths have had comorbidities. So most people say, hey, look at that, that's great. If you're young or you're a kid, you're fine. Well, that's actually not true. What they're starting to see is this virus is potentially a virus that impacts clotting and blood vessels, and that leads perhaps in kids maybe kids that are asymptomatic, right? That develop some kind of inflammatory response, and they get issues with their vessels of their heart, and get a bad rash and a fever. The good thing is, if your kid does develop this rash and this fever, if you take them to the hospital quickly, there's treatments, whether it's giving specific antibodies to lower the inflammatory response, to give them certain medicines, providing treatment. So there are ways to minimize the risk or treat this problem, but it is scary. My gosh, I mean, because we keep talking about how kids are fine. Now, I will say this is a very, very, very small risk in kids who get it, But my gosh, if it happens to your kid or my kid, I mean, I don't care
It's
how
a big
small the
deal.
risk is.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's not benign. So that is a really important thing. But if caught high fever, rash, go get checked out right away. Don't wait and don't sleep it off.
Is there any correlation that doctors are seeing why some kids who get COVID-19 then develop this second thing?
Not that I'm aware of, but the research is so fast on this stuff, so it's very possible I just haven't come across that in my daily readings. But there's something called Kawasaki syndrome that's been around a long time. That some kids get. This is very similar symptoms to that. It's not the same thing, but if anyone knows of Kawasaki's or wants to look up Kawasaki's, you can kind of correlate the two. And again, that's a vasculitis that affects the blood vessels of your body.
A lot of folks on Facebook are talking about, we can have these big protests, but why can't we reopen the city? You put 10,000 people downtown for a couple of hours together, shouting and yelling and walking. Some have masks, some don't. But why can't we just open salons to full capacity? Why can't we open the gyms to full capacity? It's just not making sense to a lot of people.
Well, I would say to look at the U.S. Constitution. Freedom of assembly is a right that this wonderful country gives us. I would also remind people that there were protests a few months or a month or two ago about the fact that this city was closed and we weren't opening up fast enough. So I think the freedom of assembly is one that everyone values. And so number one, I think that's very different than your salon being closed. But don't get me wrong. I mean, I hear what people are saying, and I would like to highlight that the roadmap we put out at the beginning, to where we moved salons, we changed rules around music, because a lot of great people are experts in the field, giving us ways. Hey, we can make this safe by doing X, Y, and Z. And we, Mayor Cooper and the team, we've all been we've heard it. We've made changes. I mean, live music, when we opened up live music, which, by the way, was supposed to be a phase 3 thing, we opened them in phase 2. We initially did 2 people, and now we're doing as many people as you want, because we spoke with some great people who run venues and are in the music industry, and like, listen, if we do A, B, and C, we can be safe. And we looked at it from a public health eye, and we agreed. So we have been pretty, I think, flexible. And when people make they're great partners and make rational ideas, we take them, right? We've never claimed to own ideas. But I want to highlight, it's very different to have the freedom of assembly, especially as assembling something is like injustice, or if you felt that the closures were wrong. I mean, we respect that, we honor that, we welcome that. We welcome you to do it in a safe manner, social distancing, masks, that can be done. But I don't think the two of opening salons and assembling are the same. So.
Fair enough. As you look at these numbers every day, and you have said multiple times on air and off air with me, this is something I'm spending time thinking about. So you're not making these decisions flippantly. What are the things that you are really considering for the weeks ahead as we move forward as a city?
Sure, and I want to highlight, and it is just more than me, right? Gosh, yesterday I probably reached out to a handful of really smart people to think through this. So things we look at, obviously the numbers, the metrics we spoke about. The other thing I look at is, are we able as a city to handle what we have? So for example, maybe it's a terrible analogy, but I'll try. So for example, when you're getting into your shower, right? You may start the water off at a lukewarm thing, and you get in there like, all right, this is tolerable. And then you make sure you can tolerate it, you're not burning, you raise the temperature a little more, and then you raise the temperature a little more every time, as long as you know it's safe. And that's kind of how we are here. So yes, our cases are going up, but because of that infrastructure we have, we know, hey, this is isolated to here, or it's there, or maybe, and then we look at our hospitals, able to handle if there are people that are sick? Are people getting more sick? That's another thing we look at. It's really not something we put in a metric, but I have a pretty reasonable sense, or more people getting sick, or more people being hospitalized, or more people who are in the hospital in the ICU. We look at all of that, and so it's really hard to say one number, one thing. Now, again, yes, the past few days I've been saying the numbers are going up, and that's why we're stopping. But that's because we're just pumping the brakes. Similar to my shower analogy, I just want to make sure the city can handle the increased temperature, and if it can, then maybe we expand it a little further. And so hope that answered it. I know
It does, because
no.
I mean, I think that we are all on the same page now that we're not going to get to a day anytime soon where we're like, there were no new cases today, or even a week where we had no new cases. I mean, it's just not going to be the reality.
That's right. And I think it's really important for people to know, and that's why, again, the new normal, we say sometimes, it's not the reality. But if you get sick, are the people who are getting sick surviving? Are the people getting sick getting the care they need, and are we minimizing the spread? And if the answer to that is yes, then listen, Mayor Cooper, me, everyone else I talk to, of course we want to open things up. We want people to get back to a new normal, a new life, the life they knew before all this. But that's, yeah.
For the most part, people are not being hospitalized. The vast majority don't have to be hospitalized. When you hear about their symptoms, the folks who can stay at home, what are they? Are they like the flu, or is it less than that?
All of the above, right? So, actually, I had this report in front of me today, but a fair amount of the people are moderate symptoms. So, fever, cough, loss of smell, and so forth. Those are things that happen. Most people can treat that at home. Now, people who have more trouble staying oxygenated, so the little pulse ox thing that people put on, if all of a sudden your oxygenation is dropping because your lungs aren't able to do what they need to do, well, that's when you're hospitalized. And it's the people that really start having a problem with the ventilation, and your body has the vascular problems and other things when everything just shuts down. Those are people that die. And so I think our hospitalization rate is I don't know, total since all this started, maybe 5%, maybe a little less. But those 5% are sick people, and I actually, crazy enough, know a few of them personally before all this. Socially know several of these people, and these are strong, healthy people who get hit with this, and it just knocks them out, and they've taken a while to recover from it.
That was going to be my question. How are they now if they've been out of the hospital for a while?
Well, it takes time. It definitely takes time, and some of them are still struggling a month plus out. So this isn't something you just get over.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, we have to take another quick break. We will come back with more of your questions. I do want to remind you, we have one more break or one more segment coming up. If you want to ask something, now is your chance to call in 615-737+. We'll be right back.